An incredible pleasure it is today to have both of you online in the same room to talk about how you met and how your meeting changed the direction of both of your lives. Mohammad Jabur is a student who just graduated from AUP in Management Information Systems, if I have that right. Is that your major? Was that
That's
your
right.
major, Mohammed? In
Yes,
the
that's
International Business Affairs Department, and Mohammed was the unanimous choice of his classmates to give the graduation speech. And in 1 second, you're going to have a chance to hear it. And Gisel Kordestani has been a loyal alum of AUP for years and years now and has been a real partner with me in doing all kinds of projects together at AUP. She's a tech entrepreneur and a thought leader, was with Google for a number of years after leaving Harvard Business School, was in charge, I believe, of global new business for Google, and during that time became very interested in supporting tech accelerators and startups in the occupied territories, and she in Palestine, and she has played a tremendously important role there, not only through Google, but also through her work on the board of Mercy Corps, which is actually, I believe, how you and Mohammed first met. She also founded in 2013 a rather remarkable um, uh, NGO called Crowdpac, which was devoted to helping small dollar donors support to causes that were important for them and to promote democracy. She's also a founding member of the Leadership Now Project, which is a nonpartisan membership organization of business professionals who are also supporting and working for the future of democracy. And I haven't brought everybody all the way up to date, Giselle, so I hope in the course of your conversation with Mohammed, you'll tell us what you're doing now.
Thank you.
So first you get to see Mohammed's speech at graduation.
Madam President, faculty, staff, student, ladies and gentlemen, most of all, class of 2020, good afternoon. It is an honor to be here today. I know you all think in Malta we are supposed to feel that way. We are graduating. Most of you may know my name, but you don't know my story. Today I'm thankful to have this opportunity to share with you a piece of my story. It's easy to feel helpful on a beautiful day like today. I am from Daraa, a city in the south of Syria. I was studying political science at Damascus University in 2012, and I wasn't able to finish my studies because of the war. February 28, 2013, I remember that day when my house got bombed. We had to leave the country and go to Jordan, leaving everything behind. Normally, it takes an hour to travel by a car to Jordan from Daraa, but it took us 12 hours walking from one city to other. I arrived at Zaatari camp in Jordan. At the time, there were around 25,000 people crossing the border, running away from war. At the camp, as a young person, there was nothing I could do. There is no way to complete my studies. I started volunteering with different organizations like UNICEF, Mercy Corps, Save the Children's, to support and help kids and people in need. During my work with Mercy Corps, I had the best opportunity of my life by meeting the most amazing person, Gisel Kordestani, who is an AUP alumni. She offered me a chance to complete my study, and I learned about AUP through her. I applied to AUP and I got accepted. I am I am here today finishing my degree in Management Information Systems thanks to her. Without her support, I would not have been able to finish my studies. Thank you very much, Giselle. I arrived at AUB in fall 2015 without speaking English or French. I only spoke Arabic. On my first day in Paris, I was afraid, overthinking how I'm going to communicate with people, how I'm going to live. I said to myself, if I have been through hardships, I could make it. I can make it. It was very difficult to learn two languages at the same time. In fact, there is nothing easy. Everything needs hard work. So I choose to challenge myself and fight to work hard, not only to achieve my goals, but also for the people who supported me. Thank you to AEB for always being a supporter. I believe that when you believe in yourself, you can make the impossible possible. Through my time at AEB, I had learned a lot about different cultures, knowledge, and experiences, and AUP opened my eyes to the entire world. With all these experiences and knowledge, and what I have learned at AUP, it will award me more opportunities in the future to help others and serve the community and helping the people. I have found no matter where you come from, it makes no difference what culture you follow, what language you speak, what your background is, what your experiences are, what accent you have. At AUB, we are all one community. We help, support, and stand by each other like one family as who we are. Also, by being involved with AUB activities and the community helped me to achieve my goals with a lot of knowledge that I have that I will be able to help and support my community. Before ending my speech, I would like to thank Gisel Kordestani, my family, my friends, and my professors, faculty, and staff for being beside me through my academic years. Because without you, I would not have been able to be where I am today. So thank you all. Now it's time to share the light of the knowledge that we have received at AUB with the rest of the world. Class of 2020, go get the best of jobs, go to the best graduate programs, and make real difference in your communities. I know it feels like we are saying goodbye, but we will carry a piece of each other into everything we will do next. So, class of 2020, go make history. Thank you all.
Good afternoon or good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. So, since the revolution started in Syria, which started from Daraa, the city in the south of Syria where I came from, we were like living a normal, happy life. Then the situation started getting worse. And my father, he's a construction man, but he lost all of his business because of the war, and my house got bombed. So my parents and my 8 siblings had to flee to Jordan, but I refused. Education was very important to me. I I wanted to finish my political science degree. I was at college, senior then at Damascus University. It meant so much to me to graduate, not only because I defined myself by my education, but also because I was the first one who attended university in my family. My other siblings who get married and didn't my older siblings who get married and didn't prioritize education. Most of them they work in the family business. My other younger brothers they were in middle school. So I was staying with different family members at that point. I had lost my house, and my family was already in Jordan. 2 weeks later, my father he came back to take me to Jordan. They feared for my life as the situation in Syria was getting more dangerous every day. He begged me, he forced me to leave, so I followed him. After like walking for 12 hours, I found out that like we are in the refugee camp. I didn't imagine for 1 second that this was going to be my life. It was harder than avoiding bombs. The camp was set in desert. We slept in the tents and had to wake up and move as soon as the sun came up because it was too hot and the plastic of the tent it would start melting because of the heat. I was very angry with my dad, and I had several arguments because I wanted to go back to Syria and like finish my degree. Nothing was more important to me more than that, and I believe that living in the middle of civil war it was easier than living in these camps. Eventually, beginning to understand that we all had to make sacrifice. My younger siblings had to quit schools as well. We are all in this together, and we are just trying to survive. Everything my father did, like including sleeping on the melting tent and in desert, was to save our lives. It was an important realization for me. I was no longer bitter. I was no longer angry. I just had to let that dreams go, like we all had to let some dreams go and be grateful to be alive. Immediately after that, I was itching to make myself useful. I needed purpose in my life. I couldn't just like sit there and hope for a miracle tomorrow. So I started volunteering with different organizations, and I did everything and anything I could do. I worked with Save the Children, UNICEF, and many others, including Mercy Corps. Little I did know this this last one would change my life forever. One day, while working for Mercy Corps, a woman show up, and I had a brief 15-minute chat with her. She spoke English, I spoke only Arabic, and the manager of the mission, he was translator for us. I remember she asked me, if you had the opportunity to go anywhere for your study, where would you like to go? I said, uh, I said London. She said, good choice. Uh, and this is my email, and she left. I didn't know it then, but Giselle was my miracle when I no longer believed in one. I saved a piece of paper like a that treasure, but I didn't know what to do with it. I ended up messaging her one day with the help of Google Translator. My first message to her was in Arabic, actually, and I still have it. I just have no idea how to communicate with this woman. I didn't even know her alphabet. Long short story, my angel in this guide, Giselle wanted to sponsor my studies. I had obstacle and a new obstacle now English. I didn't know any of it. I couldn't go anywhere without it. My life in the camps it didn't actually make it easy to learn. It got too difficult for me even to continue dreaming about it. At one point, I was thinking about giving up on this. It wasn't happening. People were illegally crossing European border. I was like very tempted by that. I wanted just to go away from this horrible life, and I was willing to risk dying in the sea. But trying to reach Europe, Giselle was not having any of it. That's when she suggested AUP. She helped me with my application and explaining to the board my practical situation, and I couldn't be more grateful to Giselle, obviously, and to AUB for giving me a chance to put a feet in the door and work with me and accommodate my special needs. I spoke to all of you today in English and as a graduate. Thank you to you all. AUB, AUB was an amazing to me. It was very difficult even for me even to learn how to live here. Everything was difficult, and I was on a mission. I had adjust to my new life alone, but also learn a new culture and two different languages at the same time. But like you might have gathered, I'm not afraid of challenge or pain. Thanks to AEB and the support I received, and I achieved that. I want to thank Mrs. Celeste and Kevin Ford, Christine Tomasek, and many more members of the faculty body like Justin McGinnis, who was voluntarily my tour guide and a friend. His Arabic very impressive, and his heart is even more. And Jonathan Shimoni, who is an art professor out of my field, turned to be an amazing support system for me. My English professors were patient and understanding and did more than their job calls for. I am giving a speech in English right this second, thanks to you guys all, regardless of what like we had in common. It didn't matter what I studied, what I or believed or wanted. Everyone here uh, incredible and helped me. I wouldn't be here without any of you. And in the light of everything is that's going in nowadays, whether the hardship we faced or we are facing together in the global pandemic, or the certain state of affairs, wars, racism, and pain in general, is to really believe that together we can do anything. I'm proof of it. I'm incredibly grateful and humbled to be here today, and want to remind any of who's listening that anything is possible with the right people and the minds came together. Don't give up on your dreams. I will sure. I sure will not. I want to be able to help others like Giselle did in mine. I now start this new journey with the purpose of giving back. I was the lucky one, but there are a thousand of people in my case. I hope one day to be someone's Giselle. Do you in life? Some people are privileged, some people aren't. I hope that now that you have heard my story, if you will wonder for these who struggling, always remember there is always a light at the end of the temple. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mohammed. Honestly, all the thanks goes to you, and all the hard work that you've done is
All of
incredible.
this is because of you, and like without you, I'm not be here today. Really.
It's very kind. I don't know if everyone on the call knows, but Mohammed's in Paris and I'm in Silicon Valley in the Bay Area in California. And we've only managed to see each other a few times over the last 5 years or 6 since we met. So we've done most everything through technology, a lot of communication over WhatsApp and Google Hangouts and you name it. We have 2 things in common, Mohammed and I. One is we are both the first person in our families to graduate university. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And the second thing in common is that we both graduated from AUP. And it feels like a family. This university has been so good to both of us in very similar ways and very different ways. And I graduated in 1996 as an international relations major. And I think, taking classes with Susan Perry and traveling to South Africa and to China on her request for us to go and explore the world couldn't make anybody but an activist and someone who's a global humanitarian. And even though when I left AUP, I was poor and broke and had tons of student loans, I didn't go into that line of work. I constantly, throughout my whole career, made sure I gave back and found the opportunities to do so. And that's kind of how it led me to this path. So after AUP, I left and went into management consulting in New York City and was shipped out to lots of different places around the world. Brazil, Argentina, Paris, France, Japan. And I, constantly found ways to interact with local communities. And one of the things that I really thought was important through my career was that making sure that anything that you do for, the most privileged, you actually also offer exactly to those who aren't. And I left management consulting, went to a startup, and then went to Harvard Business School. When I graduated Harvard, I went straight to Google and spent 8 years at Google. And in my last role at Google, I was very fortunate to work for someone who gave me a lot of liberty to do some of the things I wanted to do. I was working at the time in the Middle East and Africa, running all new business development, which I ended up then running for Europe and then for Latin America and then globally for Google. And one of the things that we did was teach software developers and how to build on Google's platforms. So building applications and tools for the phone and for the web browsers. And anything that we did in places like Tel Aviv, I made sure we did the same thing in Gaza or in Baghdad or Bil, Sulaymaniyah. And we just went around making sure that we weren't taking sides in any conflict and making sure that we were finding our people, because there are people like us that exist everywhere. So for me, our people at the time were engineers and technologists and software developers, and training them exactly how we would in Moscow, we would do it in Baghdad. And this led me to have a lot of places that were inaccessible to a Google employee. So most, especially was Gaza. It was very difficult to get into. The US State Department couldn't help us get in. And after a year of failing to get in and disappointing hundreds of people on the other side, because at the time, if you think of Google engineers coming to meet with engineers in some of these countries, it was a little bit like rock stars showing up. And so every time we disappointed when we couldn't do a hackathon or any kind of training and presentation. And so I was introduced to an organization called Mercy Corps, who told me that they could get me into Gaza. And I didn't believe him. I had been so disappointed by all the different paths and strings that we had pulled. But it turned out that they did, and they were able to get the right people to the room to do the right US government OFAC compliance to make sure that there aren't any deemed terrorists in the room, and just all of the compliance and regulatory issues, and also the last mile. And that was the first interaction I had with Mercy Corps was in 2008. Since then, I've done almost none of the initiatives that Google did in fragile states or highly conflict environments. We didn't do any of them without Mercy Corps. And so it was a great partnership that we built. When I left Google in 2012, I started having discussions with Mercy Corps to come on the board, which I ended up joining 2 years later because I had had my second child by then. And I'm now currently the chairman of the board of Mercy Corps, and just became chairman a year ago. And so it's been an interesting role. Mercy Corps' mission is really to alleviate poverty and suffering in the most conflict and fragile states, and to transform that into market-driven local solutions to build resilience into fragile communities. And so it's a humanitarian organization that really pushes into economic development, and the lion's share of the work is helping local populations resolve local problems through market-driven solutions so that they're sustainable and really have long-term impact. And so one of the things that we do is go, help in refugee camps, not just providing shelter and water and things like that, but we build programs around education, around, absolutely everything you can think of. I don't know if you know, but the average life of a refugee is a refugee in a refugee camp is 24 years now. And so the minute a camp sets up, like Zaatari, where I found Mohammad, it started overnight in 2011 when 25,000 people fled Dara, which is Mohammed's hometown. And it's too close to the border. It's actually not in regulation. You need normally to be further away from the Syrian border. It's now the second largest city in Amman. It will probably never go away. And I have some photos to share with you because the first trip I took where I met Mohammed, everything was tense. And it was still a very new camp. This was May 2014 when we met. It had, I think there were 40,000 people there, and now it's grown to 100,000 people. And so why don't I do that? Let me share that with you so that you can come on the journey with Mohammed and I. So this is when you drive into Zaatari refugee camp, where it's a completely gated and barbed wire covered. You have to have a permit to go in or out. You're not allowed to, there's no free movement of people. You can see the Mercy Corps and UNICEF signs. These are water trucks that Mercy Corps trucks in all of the water. We've built also wells that go 500 meters deep because the water shelf is very low. In Jordan, that's one of their poorest resources is actually access to water. You can see this is in 2014. So at the time, they were all tents. Most of these now have been converted to caravans or containers, or lightly built housing. They will not allow any permanent structures because they don't want it to become a city. So you are able to build the water and piping systems to have water coming into the home. So people are still using mostly latrines or latrines in their home, and running water is usually down the block or outside of the housing and not inside. This is just a picture that I took as we drove in. You can see the ground will not ever be covered with asphalt or anything that is easy to walk on or use, because the same thing, they don't want it to become a permanent town. Some of the things that Mercy Corps does is build playgrounds and schools. And so this is where Mohammad and his father and his brother-in-law had been volunteering for Mercy Corps. And what Mercy Corps does is employ the people in the camp. And so we try to figure out what their skill set is and how we can use it. And so builders are really helpful. So Mohammed's dad and his resources there were really used a lot. One of the things he did was a security guard as well for the children in this play center. Another thing we did was bring in some artists, because you see a lot of the color is just sand tones. And so we brought in an artist to color the playground and the schools so that there's just a lot more bright. And Mohammed's family lives just across from this center. I'm sure you recognize these photos. And this is one of the schools that we've built. And this is Mohammed's family. So this was one of my, I think it's the second trip I went back, where Mohammed was already in Paris. So he's has 9 siblings. And this mom and dad are here too, right next to me on either side. Some great logistics and distribution in the camp. And here's Mohammed's family again. His mom is so very proud, and father too. Father's in the middle. And all the siblings. And your sisters, and the sisters' husbands, and they get little kids, grandkids now. This is a Mercy Corps team that works in the camp. We brought a couple technologists from the Valley to visit. And here, what this is a wood shop. And what the wood shop does is make accommodations for handicapped children so that they can sit in school comfortably. And so this is just one of the projects that we work on. This is me painting with children. Lots of kids, lots of, I think in Zaatari camp, it's almost 40% or 50% are children, and 25% are children under the age of 5. And so you have children everywhere. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about security and making sure they develop. And we do a lot of psychosocial programs for them as well. That's the Syrian border on the other side. So it's that close to where Mohammed can live, but he cannot, well, we can talk about your challenges now of traveling, given you're in Paris, but that's how far away it is. It's not far, but the border is now closed, fully closed. There's no travel allowed back and forth over the Syrian-Jordanian border. It was Mohammed and I in Paris on one of my trips through, checking in on him. This is where he has his longer hair. He had just arrived and shaved his beard, and I think had some freedom. And then on a later trip to Paris. And one of the things Mohammed and his mom, one of the rare trips that you were able to go home. Unfortunately, or very fortunately for Mohammed, he came to Paris on a student visa, not a refugee visa, but that therefore does not allow him to travel back to Jordan to see his parents, because Jordan doesn't allow Syrians, especially young men, to come in alone without a reason. And his reason is to go to a refugee camp, which most people are trying to get out, not get in. You need to get a permit to go into the camp, which we can organize through Mercy Corps, but to get into Jordan took us a lot of pulling strings. And we did finally have to get to the Minister of Interior to allow him to go and visit, which takes a long time to get that process. And so unfortunately, the first 3 times that Mohammed tried to go from Paris home to see, or to the refugee camp to see his family, he was turned away at the airport. And then he actually made it on one flight to Jordan and was turned around from Amman and had to fly right back. He's been turned away from the American embassy 3 times. He cannot get a permit here. So it's been, the challenges didn't stop when he left Zaatari. This is Mohammed with my son, my second child. And Mohammed giving his speech at AUP. We're so very proud of you.
Thank you.
And then this is your email. I kept your email. So for me, my story is when we were in the camp visiting the very first time we met, we were invited into Mohammed's dad's container and a tent he had to put together for the large family, and just to visit and talk. And for we had brought in some donors and some technologists to just understand the situation, to see if they could come up with solutions for refugee camps. And so they invited us in and served us Coca-Cola, and we sat on the floor and really had this lovely discussion, and all the kids were around. And he had given us a ton of advice and a lot of input, into his life and the daily struggles. And so we thanked him and we said, you've done a lot for us and given us a lot of information. Can we do anything for you? Is there anything you need? And he said, all I need is for my son to finish his education. And so I said, okay, that's easy. We can do that. Here's my email. And Mohammed gave me his email. And that was the beginning of a really long trip. Trying to get him educated in the Middle East was impossible at the time. In 2014, there were over 1 million people applying for schools in Jordan, in the UAE, in Lebanon, and in Egypt. And so no one was accepting Syrian students. Even though he had been a great student, he was in his second year at the University of Damascus, it was impossible to get him into any local university as a Syrian refugee. And so that's when I made a phone call to Celeste and I said, can we try to organize something here? And what we needed to do is get Mohammed a TOEFL test. Getting a permit to get out of the camp to go take the TOEFL took a very long time. And for him to even get access, the internet connectivity is actually turned off in refugee camps because they don't want people to organize and they don't want people to uprise. And so all the large NGOs have access. And what you'll find is a lot of kids have cracked the code and figured out the passwords. And so they're all around the big UN offices and Mercy Corps offices in the camps, so they can try to tap in and get free Wi-Fi. They are allowed to have smartphones, and so you'll get like slow, 2G technology and GPRS, so you can get online, but it's not, and it's expensive. And so then they can't, there's so many blocks to it. You can't have a bank account as a refugee, you don't have a status, and so you can't actually get a postpaid phone, you have to get a prepaid phone, but to get the actual, cards and things and phones, you have to get out of the camp. And so anyways, but Zaatari is a really special place because it's less controlled now than it was, and less controlled than the other camps that are in Jordan. And so you have what is kind of the shopping street within this massive camp. And they call it the Champs-Élysées, which is pretty funny.
Yes.
Yeah, Mohammed knows it. And you can get a haircut, you can rent a wedding dress, you can get, it's pretty amazing. So, I share this story with you because I think there are two parts of it. One is the conversation that Mohammed and I started in that camp. He just came back and was politely persistent and constantly trying to find a solution. And there are several people that we support. I feel really grateful that, I came from nothing and I focused so much on my education, and now I'm able to give back. And there's some people that you find that just have this determination that I did, and I want to help them. And there are very simple things that we can do to leverage our relationships and our networks to help. And you help one person, one job feeds 7 family members. And so it really comes from that two sides of him really having the desire and the drive, and me having the ability, the will, and fortunately now the resources and the time to help. And so that's how our stories came together. And I think it just also, it would never have happened without AUP and Celeste without you. So thank you for taking a gamble. Thank you for providing. The first full year was intensive English for Mohammed, and it really paid off. And I'm so proud of him, and I'm so proud of AUP for taking such a big risk and taking the time to accommodate him and me. So that's our story. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And
Thank
we do have a few, but let's pause, please. And yes, congratulations to both of you on such an amazing, successful, wonderful journey together, which I have a feeling is just beginning. Mohammed, especially, I want to make sure that you scan through these comments, which we'll send you later, because there are some lovely affirmations there that we don't want you to miss. We'll be able to share those with you directly later if it's hard, as I know it can be, to both read comments and participate in the call. But know that virtually everyone on this call is so impressed by your accomplishments and so proud of you now in AUP graduates. So thank you. And you even have a job offer from Anna Nelson, who we really don't want you to miss that one. Anna, thank you for offering to connect Mohammed to your connections at the International Committee of the Red Cross. We will help you follow up with and connect you to Anna. We'll give you a piece of paper, just like the one that you had with Giselle, to connect you directly. We've had a couple of questions, which one is a sort of tactical one. I wondered if, just given everything that's happening on the world right now on the health scale, has COVID been an issue in camps such as the one you lived in, Giselle or Mohammed?
Yeah, I'm sure we both could talk to that.
Yeah.
Do you want to answer how it's impacted your family?
Because as we know, the camp is controlled by the police and the security and this, and during the COVID it started there in Jordan, and it's in the camp, it's if it's happened there, the coronavirus is going to be more complicated because Jordan is a poor country, and they were since the beginning, they controlled really very good, and they didn't allow any person to go outside the camp. They will provide them with food and with anything that they don't need things from outside the camp, so they control it, and in Jordan they control the situation very well. And that way, they provide them everything, but they aren't allowed to go during the day, and this have special time. They can go outside to get their stuff, the food, what they need. But now it's everything coming back to normal because they control it well. They had a few cases. There is no case in the camp.
Amazing. Giselle, anything that you would add on the Mercy Corps broader scale?
Yeah, so, everything we do is fully impacted by COVID-19. Absolutely nothing has not been impacted. So when you think, though, about a Syrian refugee, especially there's a huge population of Syrians on the move right now in just south of Turkey on the west north side. There are 1 million people who are living not in a camp, who are in full movement. COVID-19 is problem number 30 on their list. They need water and food. That's the two. Shelter's a third. And so if you go down the list of these fragile states, the coronavirus just doesn't hit in the top 10. However, for us as an agency, it's got to be number one. And so we're doing all kinds of programming. There are lots of programs around WASH, so all the sanitation of hand cleaning and teaching people and passing out masks and sanitizers and teaching people to wash their hands and providing access to water. And there's a huge education around it because a lot of people carry their water with them. And if you're carrying gallons of water, miles and miles every day, you're not going to use it to wash your hands. You're going to use it to drink and to cook. And that's the top two things. You're just not going to have your kids wash their hands after every meal, before every time they go outside. And so it's a really tough thing. We've got to get water into the right places. How it impacted Mohammad and Zaatari specifically is Jordan shut down really early. The entire Middle East shut down really early, even before the Europe and the West. And they did it so quickly that some states that are fragile, it didn't work very well. Some states that are not fragile, like Jordan, it worked too well. And so one of the things Jordan did was they put the military out on the highways and said, no one can move, no one can travel more than a kilometer, and only emergency workers. But they didn't put humanitarian aid workers in emergency workers. And so we deliver water and food and all this stuff into the camp. And we also service the pumps that are in the camp, and none of those people could get to the camp. And so all of a sudden when you're working in a camp, it's run by the UNHCR. And so a lot of your interactions and governance and control issues are with the UN. All of a sudden now they're with the Jordanian government, which we've been working with one side of it, which is like the international development side and, you know, security, but now it has to be with like the health department and describe to them, well, wait, we need these truck drivers and these like repair people on the road every day to get to the camp so there's water. And you know, a situation like that you can resolve very quickly because it's so urgent and it's a very functioning environment. In other places, it is highly dysfunctional and it's not working. And we've had, you know, all kinds of issues. Like in Nigeria, one of the issues is you can't travel to the 13 states, and we provide a ton of support to Boko Haram region in the Northeast. And we can't get there right now. We do cash distribution so people don't go into Boko Haram. And for them, a lot of the, you know, false information that's being passed is that the Westerners are bringing the disease. And so we have to stop all the Westerners. And which is okay for us because 95% of our employees are locals. But there are quite a few, I think in general, Mercy Corps is seen as a very Western organization, and there are quite a few people who in leadership, especially who look like me. And so it's an issue because everyone is stopped. No one can go. And this is, 3 months of not having cash for work program is hugely impactful in terms of violent conflict and the uprising of violent conflict. So even, it's not even like, can we stop coronavirus? It's all the other issues that when you stop humanitarian relief and economic development from happening, there are bigger problems that come out. So it's kind of impacted everything we do.
I'm sure. Thank you so much for sharing that. We have more affirmations. Please be sure to read. Wadek says, listening to you both makes me feel so pleased to be part of AUP and our mission. You really are the essence of what we stand for. And boy, I think we all agree so strongly with that statement. Thank you, Wadek. Mimi Svensson, one of our founding class members who has been on almost all of these AUP2U programs and has been such a solid supporter of us. Thank you, Mimi. Offers this. Congratulations and thank you for telling us your stories. Your stories are documentary film ready for editing now. Any thoughts on that? Would you ever think of telling your story more broadly than this platform?
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I've done a couple documentaries already. I did one about walking through the tunnels between Gaza and Egypt. And, you know, I think absolutely an AUP story like this would be phenomenal. So, yeah.
Great. We'd love to follow up on that.
I actually have one, like, Anna, if you're listening, Mohammad needs a job and we're on a timeline because he's on a student visa and I'm desperately trying to find him a job. He cannot go back to Jordan at all. And his only place, because he has only a Syrian passport, he could only go to Syria right now. And so that's unacceptable. He has a visa until November in France and we need to get him a job in France.
This is how AUP rolls. I want to read you Anna's comment. Mohammad, if you are interested in possibly pursuing a role in the humanitarian sector, I would be happy to connect you to some of my former colleagues at the International Committee of the Red Cross. They are headquartered in Geneva and have an office in Paris. And so she offers to make that connection. So absolutely, we will follow up on that, Mohammad. And thank you to Anna. Any other ideas on the call, lob them forward. We will make sure that Mohammad hears them. This is how AUP rolls. These connections really work, obviously. So thank you very much. Other comments, questions, put something in the chat bar or raise your hand. Celeste, I was just gonna ask you.
I wanted to add 2 more things about Mohammad that I think he hasn't really said yet, but it's been implied. One of them is that he didn't just have to learn English when he came to AUP, he had to learn French. He had to learn French just to manage daily life in Paris, and because it's a requirement of every student at AUP. So he arrived essentially having to learn 2 languages from scratch. I don't know if you have a clue what that's like, but as someone who, as a young person like him, had to learn 1 language from scratch, just being thrown into the mess, I think you deserve all the credit in the world and all of our praise in the world for doing that. And he now communicates and has friends in both French and in English. The second thing is that Mohammad played a leadership role in Batna Avu, which is a club that we have on campus. And it's a club that works in tandem with 2 NGOs in Paris that help Syrian refugees land in France and find their way. And on Wednesdays and Saturdays, I think we received Syrian children and their parents who came to AUP in order to play and do movement and all kinds of things. And we sometimes actually helped their parents learn French so that they could do administrative things when they were trying to get papers for their families and things like that. And one of the things that I've thought about so many times is what a role model you were, Mohammad, for those children, as somebody who was embarking on both an English and a French education at the same time, and what a critical role you played in their lives. Do you want to say something about your work with Batna?
Yeah, for sure. Like, since I arrived to AUB, because I heard like from Ziad Majid, like that like it was like 3 students, grad students, they're looking forward to start, like, you know, because the situation, there were a lot of Syrians, they came to Europe, to France, and they were looking to do an organization. So I helped them, like, you know, what I used to do in camps, in the camp with like different organizations, how we work with kids and this. And through Ziad Majid also we meet like with different organizations like Surya Hariya and Qudsi, like fundraising, like we support the kids in Lebanon and like in Turkey, like for the education. Like we do the fundraising thanks to AUP for always allowed us like to do fundraising, like, and also the project. And with the activities we do with Baytna Abu, it's Baytna Abu, it means our home for you. Baytna, it's a word in Arabic, it means home. And yeah, we do different activities with kids, art therapy and music and language. Arabic, for example, we teach them Arabic and English. And for the parents, like, because they were waiting for their kids at MX, and we used to teach them French, and they can meet a new Syrian, like they have, because they are new here and they don't have people to make friends or something, they can meet each other. And also through Baytna Abu, we work also with you with your help, Celeste, through like the Human Anti project, like, you know, the project that we have done. It was an amazing, and like these books, like we made around 600 books, like, you know, AUP donate for that to this, and the money, and we, the fundraising of that, we support the education with the Qudsi organization, and for supporting the education in Lebanon, in the camp, and in Turkey.
We have another question on the feed, if I could interrupt to say, from Anna, who is not making any promises, but can't wait to connect with you, and has a question for Gisel. So nice to see you after so many years. Anna and Gisel are AUP contemporaries. I'm wondering, in terms of digital transformation and problem solving, what are some opportunities that new technologies offer in the context you described? We hear so much about issues like facial recognition, especially in authoritarian regimes. And obviously there are a lot of legitimate concerns about practicing biometric data. And there are worries about new weapons, like so-called killer robots, which we're happy are not entering our Zoom calls. Let me just add that. Putting the fears aside, what do you see real potential, what real potential do you see in terms of new tech and digital transformation? Thank you.
Yeah, there's so much. Oh my gosh. So there is a huge downside to technology. It can be used for good or for bad. And I think that's where your values, your ethics, your morals have to be questioned first, and the people who are doing it need to have guiding principles. And so whenever we do something like that, we set those first, especially being in Silicon Valley, that's part of the discussion every single day. The ones I'm most proud of to work on directly are probably the ones I know the best. So some very simple is just giving access to people. So in Gaza, we created an accelerator to help startups. And what we realized is, like, even though we're helping these startups, it's not that helpful because the market's so small, and they have no ability to go in and out. And so we did a coding academy for high school kids and for college kids. And we mandated that it had to be 50% women. And the coding academy is teaching them how to build, software and tools for markets outside of Gaza, which they've never really had access to. And so we started with them building for Saudi Arabia, and then for Western Europe, and for the United States. And that's going so well that we ended up, quite a few people have graduated from that. And then they need jobs, and they couldn't get payment for jobs online, and because they can't travel and go out, and there's all these OFAC restrictions. So then we created this freelance academy in the same structure, and this, it's been funded by Google and Coca-Cola and a bunch of individuals. It's called Gaza Sky Geeks. And the Freelance Academy started, I want to say almost 2 years ago. We're about 18 months to 2 years now. And they have just earned, these freelance software developers have just earned $1 million in revenue. And think about, that's basically building software for people who are outside of Gaza. And we're finally able, through a partnership, get payments into them. And that opens a whole new economy if you think about it. And I've had people tell me, Gisel, this is the first time that I haven't wanted to get the heck out of here. And everyone I talk to, Mohammad knows this, we've had this conversation, a lot of people I talk to want to get on the boats and travel across the Mediterranean and come in as an illegal, just because that's their only hope. And now people in Gaza are sitting there saying, I don't have to leave. They're not allowed to leave, but I don't have to leave because through this, I have the ability to, one, a livelihood, to work in a world that's totally different than mine. And so their technology is completely transformational. There are others, so you talk about, some of the biometrics. We do use biometric scanning in refugee camps to be able to do cash distributions. And so there are iris scans, because a lot of times, you will get quite entrepreneurial family members who will come in and have the same 10 children trying to collect cash for the 10 kids that you've seen before. And so we'll identify when you don't have identification. So when you flee your home, you don't have ID, you lose it on the way, someone takes it from you. The only way to do identification and to do it securely is actually online. And so we will create, an identification through 2 ways. One is you can either do it through a biometric, through a fingerprint, or through an iris, or you can do it in another way that's a little less technical but actually works the best, is if 3 people know who you are and tell who you are, then we know that's you. Then we will assign that name and a number to you, and then you will be able to have a government issued ID. And so there's an old school way and there's a new tech way. The iris scan technology, I think, works very well if you keep it private and secure and use it for things that are, what it's meant for. And that's where the values and the morals and the decision makers behind it have to be, have real guiding principles of why they're using it. So for iris scan technology, it was actually created by Jordanian, and it's used in the Jordanian camps, and it works very well, because if you don't have identification, the difference between a Mohammad Jabur and a Mohammad Jala, there are hundreds of them. And so you need to know who they are for them to be able to get an ID, a bank account, to get money, to have any status in an environment. And so Mercy Corps spends a lot of time taking refugees and getting them their identification, finding ways to identify them, because if they have identification, then they can enter into the Jordanian system that allows free healthcare and free education. But if you don't have ID, you don't get that. And so that's another way. And then I have another board member who works on the robots, the killer robots, but it's not meant to be killer robots. So they're tiny, minuscule drones that can go into buildings and find people. And so when you're in a war situation, it's really helpful to know where people are to help them get out. And so could that be used for bad? Of course. Are they using it for bad? No. And so, yes, and I totally agree with you. There are some really scary ways that it could be used, but there's some incredible ways that technology is being used. Oh, I have one more. I have a really fun one. I did this at Google. So in Eastern Africa, there are a lot of free-range animals, and there are a lot of villages that are too close or are on national reserves, but there's the fencing around, and so a lot of crops get destroyed by elephant stampedes. And so in this one town, there's this entrepreneurial person who's a farmer, and he's like, I'm just losing so much crops to these elephants, and it's frustrating me. And then he wants to pay poachers to shoot the elephants and make them go away. And he's like, but I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt them. How do I get them to not come? And so with a conservationist, we tagged the elephant's ears with GPS chips. And so he would get a text message when they were nearby, so he could go with sticks and yell at them to go away so that they wouldn't come to his property line.
That sounds low tech and high tech, actually. What a great solution. Love that. Love that. And Anna says it's important. It's so true. So important that we hear tech for good stories, because we hear a lot of tech for malicious intent stories. So thank you for sharing that. We are just about out of time, and I would like to ask you our trademark last question to each of you. We're all on Zoom calls all day, all night, reconnecting, connecting with friends and family and associates. So could you please each perhaps tell us one thing that we should take to our next Zoom call, Zoom reception, Zoom party, and talk about, to share this incredible inspiration story, to tell us what we should spread the word here. Tell us what word we should spread here. And perhaps Mohammed, you could go first, then Giselle.
I think if you have a dream, you should fight for it, and keep going and don't give up. And there is always a hope, and for whatever you're gonna be in hardships, and this is gonna be at the end, you're gonna find the light, and keep going and don't give up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mine is probably my philosophy, especially now in this deeply disturbing time. Everything is so intense. And my philosophy is the opposite of my husband's. So when huge, enormous problems face you, and they are facing us right now, and they're tripled right now, a lot of people get paralyzed by how overwhelming it is. And it feels like you can't make change happen. And I feel the opposite. I feel just even baby steps. You've got to be part of the solution. And if you're doing nothing, you are part of the problem. And for me, it's just, even if you do baby steps, one person at a time, you can help in dramatic ways.
Amazing. And haven't you both shown us how that can happen? Thank you so much. Celeste, do you have any closing comments?
Oh, just that I wish am I muted? No, just that I wish we had another half hour, because we gave an award 3 years ago to Giselle, the Presidential Award for Distinguished Achievement, for all the things, the magic that she's made in the world, but especially for the fact that she cares deeply about our democracy. And I wish we had another 15 minutes to hear about what you're doing about our democracy in the run-up to the election, how technology can help with that, because that's what Crowdpac was about. So Mary, are we allowed to have 5 more minutes for those who want to stay, and those who want to leave have to go?
We should do another talk. That's
we'll do another talk on democracy. That's a good idea.
Oh, well, that's a great idea.
A great idea.
Will continue. And I think if we've heard anything today, it's about the power of AUP, right? I mean, Celeste and Giselle and Mohammed, you bring such light to, as you said, intense situations. So we welcome you back for another discussion on democracy very soon. And I'd like to thank everyone for coming. Thank you for your support of this program in every way, including some of the people on the call have been financial supporters of the university in this intense moment. We thank you for that and invite you to learn more if you're interested. We have next week 2 more fantastic programs on the AUP to Use series. We have on the 23rd our professor of communications who specializes in the fashion track, Madeline Ziegler, who is herself an international journalist who has done a lot of work on another pressing topic, sustainable fashion and trends of great interest. She will bring some of her students along to discuss this topic. I know it will be fascinating. That's on Tuesday. And on Thursday, we have, this plays into what happened here today, we have our own Darcy Karen, an AUP alum who today serves the university as Director of Experiential Learning, and is working with AUP students from the minute they arrive on campus with Celeste and other leaders of the university on finding your passion and turning that over your time and your education into meaningful personal and professional readiness to change the world, to take things on large and small. So join us for those, please. More information on our website. We'll send you all links. But please, if you have ideas for programs, we'd love to hear them and look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you so much, Mohammed and Giselle. You have made our weekday and month.
Organizing this.
Thank you.
Thank you to all of you. Thank you.